Let's get started on part 2 of module 6, and we are on lesson 2, configuring iSCSI. As you know, iSCSI is a SAN technology, and when we say a SAN technology, we mean the hardware which is used to connect ESXi hosts to disk arrays. So iSCSI uses standard gigabit Ethernet switches to connect ESXi hosts to disk arrays. When we configure iSCSI, we've got 6 steps. Purchase a second network interface card and install it in the ESXi host and connect it to a switch and connect it to a disk array. That's the hardware part. Then we create a logical unit number on the disk array, create a virtual switch, which creates the storage area network, connect the iSCSI adapter to the logical unit number, create a VMFS Datastore, and then we can create virtual hard disks on the VMFS Datastore, which is on the disk array. So the first step is the hardware phase, to purchase a second network interface card, put it in the ESXi host, connect it to the disk array, and now we have the hardware for our storage area network. Then the next thing to do would be to create a LUN on the disk array. Now, the disk array I am using in this example is made by a company called Synology. So the software that I will use to create the logical unit number on the disk array is made by the manufacturer of the software. They call that the Synology Assistant. And as I said, it's made by not VMware, but by the company that makes the disk array, but you will find they all pretty much work the same way. So this disk array has an IP address of 10.0.0.20, and there is no iSCSI LUN, so let's create it. We click on Create, and we give it a name such as LUN1. We use all the free space followed by Next. The name is LUN1, but the iSCSI qualified name is kind of a painful name here. IQN.2001, the year Synology went in business, .com.synology : disk station, which is the host name of this disk array. It's a painful name, we've got to remember it for later. And then under Enable the Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol, it allows us to put a password on this logical unit number. And if we put a password on this logical unit number, when we go over to the ESXi host to connect to this logical unit number, then we would have to know that password. That gives us a greater degree of security within the storage area network, but we will not enable the Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol. We will click on Next. We click on Apply, and we can see it is processing, and it's in the process of creating the logical unit number. And now we can see that the logical unit number has been created on the disk array, and it's ready. What we did was we created a logical unit number on the disk array using the software which is distributed by the manufacturer of the disk array. A logical unit number is a logical container that contains some or all of the disks and the disk array. And the logical unit number is what is presented to the ESXi host. The logical unit number is the point of connection to the disk array. So now we've got the logical unit number taken care of. Next thing to do is to create the virtual switch, which creates the storage area network, and then connect the iSCSI adapter to the logical unit number. To create the virtual switch, under the Configuration tab under Networking, we click on Add Networking to create a new virtual switch, and we don't click on the connection type of virtual machine because that is to send traffic to virtual machines, to the production network. We select the second option, VM kernel, and that is for sending iSCSI traffic over the storage area network, VM kernel. Click on Next. We then do not select the first network interface card, which is already connected to the production network. We select the second network interface card, the one we recently installed. and that one is connected to the disk array. We select the second network interface card, followed by next. We then give it a name, such as SAN storage network. I will not give it a VLAN ID. Click on next, and then I will assign an IP address to this network interface card, the one I recently purchased and installed. The IP address has to be on the same network ID as the disk array, which, as you remember, it was 10.0.0.20. So we will make it 10.0.0. some number that is not 20. Notice we are not using 192.168.137. That is the addressing scheme for the production network. This is a different addressing scheme which is used for the storage area network. And what we're doing is we're assigning an IP address to that second network interface card, which now goes to the disk array. We click on Next, we click on Finish, and we can now see that this is the switch that was already installed, which carries VM traffic to the first network interface card, which goes to the production area network, and then down here is the virtual switch that we just created. That virtual switch goes to the second network interface card, which goes to the disk array. Next thing to do is to link the storage adapter to the logical unit number. So we click on Storage Adapters, and we select the iSCSI software adapter, and as we can see, no logical unit numbers are currently associated with it. And we click on Properties, and if we look under General, the status is Enable. If we click on Network Configuration, it is not associated with any network. So what we want to do is associate it not with a production network, but with the storage area network that we just created. We click on Add, and we click on Storage Area Network, followed by OK. Then we go over to Static Discovery. We click on Add, and we type in the IP address of the iSCSI server. And when they say the iSCSI server, they mean the disk array, which you remember is 10.0.0.20. Port number is always 3260. And then we type in that long, complicated iSCSI target name, iqn.2000-01.com.synology : disk station name. Under Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol, since we did not configure it on the disk array, we do not need to configure it here. And we click on OK. And you'll notice that Dynamic Discovery picked up on what we statically entered. We click on Close, and it says a rescan of the host bus adapter is recommended for this configuration. Rescan. Yes. We click on Yes. Now we see that this logical unit number is associated with this iSCSI adapter. Next thing to do, create the VMFS data store. So we go to the ESXi host, to the Configuration tab, under Storage. We click under Add Storage, and we select Storage Type, Create a Data Store on Fiber Channel or iSCSI. This is iSCSI. So we click on Next, and we select the logical unit number that we just attached to that iSCSI controller, followed by Next. Typically, we select the latest version of the VMFS file system, followed by Next. It shows us that the hard disk is blank and a partition will be created and used. Click on Next. We will give it a data store name, such as Datastore SAN. Click on Next. It says, do we want to use all of the space available or just some of it? We will select all of it, followed by Next. We click on Finish, and now we can see that a new data store has been created that corresponds not to the internal hard disk on the ESXi host, but to the disk array. The VMFS data store is now available on the storage area network. So now we can create new virtual machines and store the virtual hard disks on the VMFS data store. To create a virtual machine, we right-click on the ESXi host and select New Virtual Machine, followed by Next. We give the virtual machine a name, and most importantly, we do not select the data store which is internal to the ESXi host. We select the data store which is on the disk array on the storage area network. Click on Next. Typically select the latest virtual machine version. We assign the operating system that we plan to install, followed by Next. We assign CPUs. We assign RAM. We select the network adapter. We select the iSCSI controller. And then it says, do you want to create a new virtual hard disk? Well, yeah, that's the whole purpose of this entire exercise that we're doing here. A virtual disk is composed of one or more files on the host file system. Together, these files appear as a single hard disk to the guest operating system. So definitely create a new virtual hard disk. Click on Next. It will be 40 gig in size, and most importantly, we will save that virtual hard disk on the disk array on the data store, which is on the disk array. We click on OK. We click on Next. We click on Finish. Now we've created a virtual machine that has its virtual hard disk on the data store on the disk array. So now let's view the virtual hard disks which are on the VMFS data store on the disk array. We select Configuration, and under Storage, we select the data store we want to look at, and right-click and select Browse Data Store. On that data store, we can see the .vmdk file, and that is the virtual hard disk, notice 40 gig in size, that we just created when we created that virtual machine on the VMFS data store, which is on the disk array. The virtual machine's virtual hard disk is stored on the VMFS data store on the storage area network. To view the network map, you scroll to the right and there's a tab that says Maps, and sometimes it's hard to remember which data store goes with which virtual machine, and this map is a nice graphical representation that shows you which data store goes with which virtual machine. It shows that data store 1 is being accessed by 7 virtual machines, whereas data store 8 is only being accessed by 2 virtual machines, and only one of them is turned on. When we say multipathing algorithms, we're referring to the situation where you have installed a second adapter in your storage array for purposes of fault tolerance and load balancing. And what a multipathing algorithm does is, assuming you do have multiple adapters in your disk array, it performs load balancing across those adapters. In summary, configuring iSCSI storage. The first part is the hardware part. You put in the second disk of the ESXi host connected to the switch and the disk array. That makes the hardware for the storage area network. Then you create the logical unit number on the disk array using the software provided by the manufacturer of the disk array. Then you go to the vSphere client and you connect to an ESXi host and you create a virtual switch, and that virtual switch is associated with the second network interface card, the one you just put in the ESXi host. Then you connect the iSCSI adapter to the logical unit number, create the VMFS data store, and then you can create virtual hard disks on the data store, which are on the disk array on the storage area network. And this concludes part 2 of Module 6.